Betty. I'm the Content Marketing Executive here at ILX. We'll just give it another minute or so for people to join, because I know there's still a few people sort of filtering in, and then I'll be handing over to Carol and Rute here, who are going to take you through the main presentation. So before I do that, there are a couple of housekeeping bits that I just need to cover off. So the first one is just, you'll notice that you're all on mute. If you could please sort of stay on mute throughout the session, that would be great. It just means that Carol and Rute come through nice and clear for everyone, which is always important. If you do have any questions as we go through, there is a question box up in the top right-hand corner of your screen. If you just want to pop them in there, and then anything sort of product related or related to today's session, we'll answer in the Q&A at the end. If you're having any technical issues, you can't see us, you can't hear us, I'll deal with those in the background. So yeah, if you just pop those in the box, then we can sort of sort them out as we're going. The webinar is being recorded. You'll be sent an email follow-up tomorrow with the link to that, and it will be available on the YouTube channel from this afternoon, so you can watch it directly over there. And feel free to sort of share with others, share with your colleagues, those sorts of things, if you think they will find it valuable. We also like to say, give us a follow on social media. We are active on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram, so you can find out lots of valuable information over there about sort of upcoming events and things like that. Today's session is going to last about half an hour, and then, as I mentioned, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I shall hand you over to Rute and Carol.
Hi there. So I'm Carol Mould, and really lovely to be with all of you here today. I'm a specialist trainer and consultant with a project management and change management background. And I've spent a lot of my career helping teams not just deliver projects and deliver deliverables, but actually bring the people along so that those deliverables are used and add value. And I've worked with a lot of different teams and really looking for that sweet spot between structure and flexibility. And that's what I really enjoy, and that's what I'm so happy about with this new version of PRINCE2 Agile, that it really does hit that sweet spot. For me, project management's not about box ticking or red tape, and if you ever feel like you are doing red tape or ticking boxes for no apparent reason, then something's gone wrong, and then we're not doing it properly. So really looking forward to our discussion today, to your questions, and with that, I'll hand over to Rute.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, so hi, I'm Rute, or Ruth if you want to, because my name is written a bit weirdly, but it's Portuguese and you don't speak the E, so I'm just Ruth. I've had the pleasure to be working together with a brilliant small team of authors, and we have produced the new PRINCE2 Agile version 2 book, or manual you can say. And as I said, I am a consultant as well, and Carol has been talking about the sweet spot, and I really like that. So my sweet spot, I would say, is between the intersection of psychology, so why do people do stuff, and organization. So I find that really interesting. And the thing I'm most hyped about is finding out what drives people, to be honest. And I think there's a huge chunk of that also went into PRINCE2 Agile version 2. And as Carol said, it's also like really centered around people, and we'll have a look at everything else that is new in PRINCE2 Agile version 2 now. So I think everybody has come in, and we can start talking about the content of the new version 2 of PRINCE2 Agile. So guys, let me take you away on an image that some of you probably will know, some might not. So being mindful that we are having a huge audience, which goes from people who are familiar with PRINCE2 project management, people who might be familiar with the older version of PRINCE2 Agile, and people who might not have an idea about what anything is. We will try to introduce as much as we can, but we're also mindful of time. So pop in a question in the chat if you are unsure about a term or anything. We forgot to mention it. We'll try to do our best. And as we said in the end, there's also Q&A. If there's something that we didn't explain well enough, feel free to pop it in Q&A. And if we cannot get to it at the end of this session, we'll at least try to follow up with you guys on it. So we're talking today about the new version 2 of PRINCE2 Agile, which is Agile Project Management. So Agile but misaligned. why delivery is still breaking down is one of the things that we wanted to address. And the interesting thing here is that we know nowadays, I would say, how important Agile is. We are living in a fast-paced and ever-changing world. And ever since the advent of AI, I think there are no more illusions about embracing change and that this is going to be the future. And those organizations who do embrace change will be the ones that probably will survive this new tech era, basically. So why is Agile delivery still breaking down? And why are we not working to deliver faster, better, cheaper, right? Because that was everything that we thought that Agile would bring us. So if we have a look at one of the most interesting reports that is done worldwide every year, the latest version of the State of Agile report, which is an independent report that asks companies and organizations across the globe, like, how far are you in Agile adoption and how well does it work? And actually, the latest data has been really interesting because we see now that Agile adoption is wider spread than ever, which is rather new, I'd say. I think it's just been like 2 years max where we can see this widespread adoption of Agile. And everybody is already using Agile in some form or shape. But what we can also see since around 1 year is that a lot of these organizations that are adopting Agile or have adopted agility are saying that Agile adoption has either failed or it's not working right. Or at least it's not delivering what they thought it should deliver, right? The faster, better, cheaper that we talked about. So many teams are using agility of some sort, but we can see in the report as well that the biggest disconnect here is that there is a difference between using agility in name only and using Agile really in practice. And this is a difference that we like to call the difference between being Agile and doing Agile. So Agile in name only, doing Agile, and really thinking, being, breathing agility, basically as a mindset that permeates everything, is being Agile. So where's the difference? We can have a look here at this interesting image, which is a Venn diagram. It's often called the Agile onion because it kind of looks like an onion. The term is misleading though, so don't get hung up on it. And I think the most important thing that we see here is that there is like this barrier here, or this disconnect between doing and being agility, and it lies between practices and then principles, values, mindset. So you can see that mindset, values, and principles, those are things that you cannot really touch and see that well, right? It's less tangible, but it's really powerful because it drives our thinking, it drives our behavior, and so that will actually drive real Agile transformation across an organization. However, if we're looking at what is really visible through actions, it's practices and processes. So basically, we are using a Scrum board. You can see that we have Post-its on walls. We have workshops that are called dailies or stand-ups and stuff like this. And the disconnect that is happening here very often, or at least what the State of Agile report is telling us, why agility is misaligned and delivery does not bring the benefits agility told us it would, is that a lot of those people who actually give us the money to drive agility, to put an Agile transformation initiative into place, or sign off on a project management initiative being Agile, is leadership. And leadership sits right up here in the organization. They give us 6 figures for whatever we are doing, and they're saying, okay, so I want to see a result. But we can't show them results right away unless we're doing practices and processes, right? Because how do I show that the mindset is being implemented? How do I show that we have values and principles now that are more agile than before? So this is a really tricky thing. So we are having people who need to work with that to deliver stuff, and then we have people deciding to give us money so that we can do it in a new agile way, and they need results which we can't show for. So very often what actually happens is we just adopt this doing agile part because that is where we can show that we're doing it. So leadership is happy, they can see that things are changing, but that does not mean that the thinking is changing, right? So this is a disconnect that is happening here, and it shows, or at least Agile coaches knew before, but now it's already also showing in data in the State of Agile report, that if we're not doing both of them, doing Agile, but also thinking Agile, the being Agile part, agility does not deliver faster, cheaper, better. So how do we get there? What do we do? we need to deal with late stage rework, right? We need to deal with the changing requirements, unclear ownership of requirements that might change during the course of a project. And all of this is where I would put agility into project management. So the new version 2, PRINCE2 Agile 2, will actually tell you how this is going to happen and how we do this in a way to address problems that slow teams down and make agility not work basically in an organization, and to make sure that also stakeholders are not frustrated, right? Because we'll have a look at what causes these breakdowns in delivery and how this updated guidance, this version 2 of PRINCE2 Agile, will actually help you with that. And one of the main things that I want you to keep in mind is it's about being agile, not just doing agile. So let us have a look at where the mindset and the practices tie into the content of this new version. And I have a beautiful image, obviously, for you guys. And we'll zoom into this a bit later as well. So, where is the disconnect happening? Big changes very often stall before they start, and this version will help you introduce a piece of organizational change management. So we think that any project, whether you've done some sort of agility before or not, needs to have a bit of the mindset introduction and implementation before you start an agile initiative. Now, it might have been that you have already started some sort of agility initiative or not, so we need to deal with different types of how far are we with agile, right? So we're talking about agile maturity at this level. Have you used agile before? Then you'd be a bit more mature in what you know in an organization about agility and the agile mindset. Have you been using it in smaller pockets within your organization or not, and so on. So this is something that we want to address right away. And this is what happens right here in the beginning. So what is happening in this image? Very briefly, for those of you that are not that familiar with PRINCE2 project management yet, this is an image that will show you roughly how any sort of initiative or project gets implemented into operations. So you'll have something that you need to decide on. We want to do initiative, we want to have a new product, we need to deal with a new requirement or whatever, and this is going to happen in some part of the organization that can make decisions, and they'll say, we need a project for this, and they'll say, okay, here is where we need to set up the project. And this is where we would also, hopefully, would be agreeing on, we want to do the project in an agile way, right? Have some of the agile mindset in it, or we need to be quick, or we can already foresee that a lot of requirements will be changing during the course of this project, so let's do an agile project. So this is what would happen before a project gets sign off. And then we can see here project direction, so people making decisions in a project. So the project has started, project work has started, and people who will actually manage the work. So a project manager, or you might know the term project lead also. That might be the same as a project manager in PRINCE2 project management. And then we have certain stages within the project, and then we have operations happening here. So what happens when we start with this, and when we have a look at PRINCE2 project management, we were thinking about the new version 2, right, of the new PRINCE2 Agile manual. So we got together with a lot of people and sat down and said, okay, so we need a new version of PRINCE2 Agile because what we have is good, but it's outdated, some of it, and some of it needs to be adapted because we've had feedback that people cannot use it very well in their practice. It needs to be more practical, it needs to be more down to earth. We need to have more prescriptive, but also practical, helpful, everyday things in there. So this is what we did. And we thought really long and hard about the idea of, do we need something completely new, like a completely new guidance, or does it actually make sense to still connect it to PRINCE2 project management? And we had this freedom, so we were in a very agile project, you can say, and we decided, no, we actually need it. We actually need to connect this to PRINCE2 project management because there's so much really good governance in there that the agility part of it can only benefit from this. So this is an important thing to note, that we actually purposefully decided, no, we will add agility into the governance framework of PRINCE2 project management, because it just makes sense. And there's a lot of things in Agile that works really well for delivery, because that's what it was made for or intended for. But agility was not really intended for organizational management purposes. So what we do there is very limited, right? So we need more than that if we go into a project where we need to juggle a lot of stakeholders, maybe even more than your regular Scrum team, for instance, right? So this is what we decided. We want to fuse the two, and we think that it will work beautifully. And it did. Obviously, I'm in love with PRINCE2 Agile too, I have to be, but I think you will see over the course of this webinar how beautifully it will work together here as well. So what else is there to know about this new version? Let us have a look at what is new and what is added. So as I said, we address the mindset up front, and we will talk about Agile maturity, how to set a baseline in that, how to track that, because we now know also from the State of Agile report, you can be Agile, fancy pants as much as you want, but you need data. In the end, we need to track stuff. We need to show people who gave us money for agility that it is working, that change is happening. They need visuals, right? So instead of giving them, we're doing this and that workshop, we're doing Scrum, we're doing Kanban or whatever, let's give them the real data that makes sense, right? How is our Agile maturity progressing? How is the Agile mindset progressing throughout the organization? How is it permeating, basically? So that is what happens up front here. And then one of the other things that we really wanted to highlight, which is a new thing that we added into this new version 2, is the handover stuff. So as we had before, you go into a project, the project is Agile, it works really well, and then you throw stuff over the fence into operations, and you're like, so here's your really beautiful new Agile thing. We're out, have fun with it. But operations was never contacted. We never really had handovers. We never talked to people, and now they have to deal with it. And that is a problem. So we said we need to talk more about how stuff goes into production. And to be honest, we need to talk about how we talk to each other, and maybe also put stuff into production during a project. Very Agile, right? And is that even possible in our organization? So that is something that will make sure that agility does not work beautifully within a project and then goes to die after the project ends, and people just get frustrated with agility and never want to hear from it again, right? That is what we call change fatigue. We don't want that in people. We want agility to work. We want it to be sustainable, right? So how does that happen? Carol, from your experience and in practice, agility, it often fails, and how will the new PRINCE2 Agile version 2 address this? Let's zoom into this picture and you can take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rute. Yeah, so what I've seen in practice and also talking to delegates that come on training is sometimes we end up with sort of pockets of Agile rather than a holistic, comprehensive view where everyone's pulling together. I like to think of it as sort of the analogy of an orchestra, where you might have maybe the percussion section wanting to play a very classical version of a piece, and then the strings say, no, we think we'll go a bit jazzy on this one. And that can work together if you've got a sort of a combined score that's blended together and intentional and thought through, where we've got that rhythm section that we get kind of the structure from PRINCE2 project management, but then we also have the flexibility and the sort of improvisation and jazziness, if you like, of agility. But we can't have two completely separate scores happening, two separate conductors and things like that. Then it's just going to be noise. And that's really what I like about this new version of PRINCE2 Agile, is that it is, and as you were saying earlier, that it does sort of deliberately still buy into PRINCE2 project management and incorporate the strength of PRINCE2 project management, and then add its own flexibility and its own flavor. So I've heard it described, and I quite like this description, that the new PRINCE2 Agile version 2 is a pre-configured, tailored version of PRINCE2 project management, specifically with agility in mind. And that really plays into the values of PRINCE2 project management, that tailoring is a principle. If you're not tailoring, you're not doing it right. And so tailoring it for Agile use is what it's, yeah, one of the things that we're meant to do is to tailor it for the situation that we're in. I also really like the ideas, as you explained there, that it's not just for the project and you throw it over the fence, and also that it brings in the strength of the latest version of PRINCE2 Project Manager, which really puts people at the center, which we'll talk more about a bit later. But that people need to adopt the changes, be willing to accept whatever's handed over to them, and be able to really get value from it at the right time. Yeah, and with the current world in mind. So if things have changed a bit in the context of the project, that the project is adapting to those changes and always giving up to the minute latest value relevant to what's going on around them. Yeah. Okay, back to you, Rute.
Yeah, so I think that is really, really beautiful, right? It's the harmony that PRINCE2 Agile really achieves. And to be honest, there is a lot of it already in the older version, but now it's, as you said, just even more tailored than ever, right? So a lot of the feedback that we had before was that you're telling us, so here's PRINCE2 project management, here's agility, this is what PRINCE2 project management does, this is what Agile can do. Here are a couple of ideas how it could work, but you need to basically tailor it on your own. And while that is true, if you want the most perfect version for your organization, you probably need to tailor it yourself. There are a lot of things that over the course of the years and the use of agility that we now know just work, right? That are pretty much a staple for organizations. So what we did now is we said, okay, so we'll go really into detail and we'll tell you what you need to do, how you do it, what it would look like, how an example would be, and so on. So we like get really into the trenches, right? And giving you stuff that you can use tomorrow in your organization. One of these things is how to deal with people. Because people are at the center of everything. If I want to put some sort of culture mindset change into an organization, people need to agree. Technically, my employees need to carry the change, right? Just speaking from the leadership viewpoint now as the employees. So if this does not happen, or agility has already failed before, and so on, people will be tired of this and me preaching from the top to bottom, we need to be more agile, and they'll be like, yeah, it has already failed before, we didn't get help, and so on, now we have to do it again, we can foresee all the problems, and so on. So this is what we don't want, right? Fatigue, resentment of change, and so on. Sadly, if organizational change management, the initiative that will make sure that people are ready to accept new things, does not happen in a good way, this is what's going to come out of it. This is why we put a very big focus on this. And you will see that this image is from PRINCE2 project management. And we thought about this. Do we want to keep it? Do we not need it? Do we need to adapt it? But we really wanted to have people in the center of this. Because to be honest, that's what Agile does. From day one, they've put people into the center. So it is really a beautiful connection here. And we'll just show you how the people part is centered in an Agile way. Right? So PRINCE2 project management again, and the how we do it is done in an Agile way. So there are two elements that will help you and help leaders as well to adopt new change across an organization, and that is psychological safety and Agile maturity, which is connected to Agile sustainability, which for us is just making sure that Agile doesn't go to die, right? After a project initiative might end. So Agile maturity is basically the thing that we want the organization to have, and the sustainability is the same thing, but over time. So we will say psychological safety and Agile maturity are the two most important pieces into making sure that your Agile culture and mindset gets adopted and can have momentum and roll on its own even after a project initiative might end. So, Carol, from your trainer and consultant view, why is this so crucial to build momentum? What would you say? I'll just pop up.
Yeah, great. So first of all, if we look at psychological safety, We've really got to, and leadership plays a pivotal role in this, create an environment where people do feel psychologically safe, where we replace fear with curiosity, and people feel able to voice different opinions than perhaps someone else has said. If we describe what does it look like to have psychological safety, first of all, expectations are clearly understood, the purpose of the project is clearly understood, and if there are any knowledge gaps amongst the team, people feel safe enough to say, I have this gap in my knowledge, and communicate that honestly, and then we can deal with it. Then we can look at how do we bridge those gaps. Do we change the makeup of the team? Do we do more training? What do we do to bridge those gaps? Another big important part of psychological safety is that questions are encouraged and genuinely listened to and responded to. So no one person has all the answers. So this also comes from the role modeling of leadership to themselves be vulnerable, ask questions, draw out the information from the specialists that they've put together in the team there. Excuse me. The other side of that is the active listening. So listening to those questions, listening to the answers, listening to different viewpoints, and being authentic in not just kind of pretending to listen and you've already decided what the answer is, but genuinely considering what people are contributing. So that also ties into the next point there, where forums for input are created. And we're seeing the PRINCE2 Agile version 2, a lot of workshops have been mentioned and sort of structured. Again, always ready to be tailored, but at least it gives us that starting point so we can have retrospectives and planning workshops and so on. Discussion guidelines communicated, so I do like that structure, that starting point about those different workshops. Appreciation is expressed regularly amongst all people. So excuse me, as I said, leadership plays a pivotal role, but so does everyone else. So it's a very collective, collegial environment that we're looking for there. Asking for, giving help is encouraged, again, regardless of someone's seniority or anything like that. Everyone can learn from everyone else, and we all can do with help at various points. Another nice thing that I like about the Agile values is the reframing of what is failure. So failure is destigmatized, learning is what it's all about. So if we try something, try an experiment, and it doesn't work, brilliant. We know that that doesn't work. If it does work, brilliant. We know that that does work. And so it's all about the learning, not about failing or succeeding. And while we have all those values in mind and sort of play out in the principles, if people go against those principles and values that we set in the team, sort of violate those principles, then people should be called out on that in a nice, productive way. But we do need to, if we're going to have ways of working, we do need to sort of uphold those ways of working and sort of recommit ourselves to following those. So quite a lot there about psychological safety. And if we move across to the Agile maturity, we can see a lot of parallels between the two. So the Agile maturity comes back to that being Agile. All of this is a lot to do with the being Agile, but sets the platform for the doing Agile as well. So the first one we look at there is transparency. So that's making sure that everyone can see what's happening. Everyone knows the latest status and things like that. And also that what is transparent is also true. So we want to have honest information transparently shared with everyone. The exploration is all about the experimenting and the learning, as I was just talking about, and very much collaboration. At the heart of agility, we want a collaborative team, psychologically safe to share their ideas and to collaborate. Adaptability built into the fabric of agility. Empowerment, about everyone again feeling safe to bring their skills and to bring their best selves to work, and to be empowered to make decisions at the most relevant place. So not hierarchical where we have to go back to senior leadership for minor decisions, but putting that power to make decisions with the people most equipped and most there at the coalface. And then respect permeates through all of this, and again ties in neatly back to psychological safety, where everyone's view is respected. So one of the things to think about with this all is, how do we know how we're doing on all of these different agile mindsets and agile, both being and the doing agile? And there's a lovely thing that I was so pleased in the new version that's been preserved, is the Agileometer in PRINCE2 Agile. So I'd like to hand back to Rute. Yeah, Rute, talk to us about the Agileometer, please.
All right, here is the Agileometer. So as Carol already said, for those of you who know the previous version of PRINCE2 Agile, this is a beautiful tool that will help you track agility, and it will help you check where you are on agile maturity, basically. You can see up here it's tracking suitability for agile, so within your initiative, or if you want to take it across the whole organization as a larger thing, you would then view the whole organization through the lens of how suitable is agile for us, what is our level of maturity to be able to implement agile thinking into whatever we're doing in the organization, and especially, of course, into our organizational culture. Because one of the things that a lot of leaders tend to sometimes forget in the struggle of everyday stress and sign-offs and whatever is that culture is not produced necessarily, it is already there, and it is something that just emerges from how people within the organization deal with each other. And if I am not actively contributing to a certain type of culture and aligning this to whatever organizational values I have, the culture that emerges is not the culture that might be good for my organization, for sustainability, and maybe not good for the sustainability of Agile either. So really making sure that I first know where we stand, and then how we can get from where we stand to a more suitable, how do you say, more suitable ground to sow Agile seeds onto, and how to do that. And this is what this tool does. And you can see that it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 focus areas, where it will tell us these areas are really important if you want to put new Agile thinking on the map of your organizational culture. This is what you need to be looking out for. So how flexible can you be in your delivery? How well are people already collaborating with each other across the organization or within the project, right? Depending on how far you want to take this agility initiative. How easy is it to communicate? Do you have tools? How about tech? What's going on? How are we using this? Is it easily accessible? Does it work? And so on. And then, of course, we will be talking about, can we deliver things in small chunks? Is especially operations already suitable or suited to us giving them pieces every X weeks, or do they still deliver every quarter or maybe every year? Do we need to make sure that there is a disconnect there that we need to handle, or do we need some sort of action to combine that, or is it already going quite agile and we're the ones lagging behind? So that is interesting to check as well. That is also something that's probably more visible than the other things. Then we have advantageous environmental conditions, which is basically everything else that we haven't talked about yet that might be a problem to the adoption of Agile mindset. And then we have the acceptance of agility, which is people on the ground doing everyday work. Do they want agility? Do they want the new shiny thing, basically? Do they have time for it? Do we support them? Because that will feed directly into their acceptance level. If I'm left alone with something, I'll probably not like it as much, right? So as an example there. So this is really a tool for that. And what is interesting is that in the new version 2 of PRINCE2 Agile, we'll actually be giving you way more details on how to basically set up an assessment if you want, and assess where and when in your organization. How often do you assess this? How do you do the numbering? And there's even an example in there of an organization and the use case, which we'll be getting to a bit further into this. So this is really where we are coming from the thinking agile, right? The being agile into the doing. So let's track where we are with doing right now and how can we improve that so that the being agile gets bigger while we are also doing agile. So this is where it really intersects. And obviously, this is a tool for measuring organizational maturity, agile maturity. So how suitable, easy is it for us to adopt the agile mindset? And it will help us here, as you can see, in a simplified scale from 1 to 5, which is basically like a Likert scale. If you're familiar with assessments, you will remember this or recognize this scale here, right? So what does it mean? Basically, low values, 1, would mean, or even 2, I would say as an agile coach, 2 is a low value, will mean there is serious work to do for you to be able to flex what is delivered or to ramp up your level of collaboration and so on. So there is work to do. We need to address this. We need to implement action items to increase agile acceptance, which is down here, so that we can make sure that agility is actually coming to fertile minds, in the sense of we can make sure that the agile mindset will actually work and will actually be able to be implemented before we're just blindly going full agile, right? Because that is a thing that has also been shown in the State of Agile report that often goes wrong, people at the leadership level, they know it's important, they know we need agility, so we just announce we will be agile. And then everybody's left alone on how to deal with that, how that happens, where that happens, and so on. And that is really what Carol also told us about, that from her experience, these pockets, right? Then these pockets of agility, non-agility pop up. Everybody's doing it differently. Nobody's really communicating with each other. And that is what we know where culture goes to die, right? We need to have good communication. We need to have the same language. And we need to all be ready and accepting of change and agility before we go in with an initiative. So when do we measure it? And who implements these actions? Let's have a look. So this can be a very confusing slide, but don't worry, we'll only focus on 2 areas here. So don't get lost in the imagery. If you want to know more about it, book a training. Yeah, so Carol can explain it to you in more detail. But what we want to have a look at is on this side, you will see the organizational structure of a PRINCE2 Agile project. And here you will see basically the timeline, or you could say the process of how things get implemented. So let's focus on the people part on this side first. So a thing that is new and that we think is really important, because we think that great leadership and autonomous agile teams are not a contradiction, is we have implemented new and adapted roles. So there have been a couple of roles before, and people who are familiar with the previous version of PRINCE2 Agile know that there were things like CSMEs, whatever, abbreviations and so on, and we decided to just adopt more agile lingo for this. So we'll be talking about people who help others to implement agility as coaches. And because we do not want to adhere to, you can only do it with Scrum or you can only do it with Kanban, we have kept this quite loose, and it's just called a team coach for the delivery level and an agile coach for people on the leadership or decision-making level. So within a project, this decision-making level would be the project board, where we have the project executive, we have the person dealing with requirements, which is now called a chief product owner or a CPO, and then we have, of course, an abbreviation, and then we have people who will actually help with giving us technical resources and telling us whether what we want to do is actually possible, which is what we would call a senior supplier. So the project executive dealing with basically finance and making sure that it aligns to our organizational goals. We have the person dealing with requirements, and we have the person dealing with how it gets done or delivery. And then we have a project manager here, which is not shown in this image because we're focusing on agile delivery and agile mindset. So we would be directly talking to the people actually making sure that delivery happens. Before, we might call this a team manager, but in agile, people from the Agile side, you might know that managing people is a tricky subject. So we have just stuck to a term that is already widely used in agility, which is a product owner, a person who will work with the team, with delivery, with the delivery team, the developers, the testers, whoever, to make sure that things are happening. And there are two things that we want to happen in a PRINCE2 Agile version 2 project, and that is one, doing things in an agile way, and two, implementing the agile mindset needed to be actually doing agility, right? So these two things. So a part of the product is basically making sure that agility arrives in the minds of people, that the agile mindset gets adopted. And this is why now we also have a team coach at the delivery level who will work with the agile coach, and they will make sure that the agile mindset really permeates into the organization. So on a process level here, how or when does that happen? So we said we need to make sure that there is a baseline drawn, right? How is the agile maturity in the beginning? Then we'll work in iterations, something that might be familiar if you know, for instance, Scrum. So there's like time boxes where we will make sure that things are worked on, but also change is mapped and then fed into the new workload. And then we will have workshops where we will talk about this. And I think this is really the beauty of the new, more prescriptive, but also more detailed version 2 of PRINCE2 Agile, that we really tell you how these workshops look. So we'll tell you, okay, so in the beginning, you will set a baseline on how mature your agility is, what you need to do. You will plan action items. You will do this with your decision makers, the board. You will do this with your coaches and make sure that it makes sense across the timeline that you're envisioning. And then you go into the project when you get sign off on, yes, we are doing this project and we are doing it in an agile way. And then you will have your regular workshops. You will have retrospectives, for instance, where you have a look at how did it go? Was that what we planned? Why did that not work? Or why did it work beautifully? What do we want to keep? What do we want to change? What new action items are needed to make sure that agility gets adopted and our agile maturity goes higher? And then we will set a new date for when we will slap the agilometer on again and ask people to tell us about how psychologically safe they feel and what the agile maturity basically is. And this is fed up from the delivery level up into the management or decision-making level through workshops. And we will also, in the new version 2, which is really exciting, show you what this workshop will look like, what agenda items are, the details of this, the outcomes that you need to make sure, and so on, what you need to do for people to support it. And we'll give you an example of an organization and how they did it. So that's really exciting, right? It's very down to earth, and it has a lot of stuff that you can come back to day and day again in your manual and have a look at. How do we actually do this? Is there an example? Yes, there is. Here is a use case. So you will see me getting fired up about this because this is like the most agile, I think, that PRINCE2 project management can be in this new version 2. We really went full agile with all of the terms and with all of the things we will tell you to implement. And I am excited about this. So I think that we actually debated again, do we keep close to the PRINCE2 project management structure or not? You will see we have kept close to it, but we've adapted everything that needed adaptation to make sure it fits agility better. And then we have also changed the naming to make sure that you know something has changed here, right? This is now fit for agile adoption. That's why it's called differently, because changes need new language. Otherwise, did we even change anything? It's a psychological thing again. So, Carol, what would you say after all of my excitement about the new stuff? What is your view of the templates we have added into PRINCE2 Agile version 2? And from a trainer and consultant perspective, does it make sense to have those or not? I'll just pop into the next slide. And here is an example of a template, for example.
Yeah, Rute, thanks so much. And yeah, as the lead author, I want to thank you especially for this part, because as a trainer, it just makes it so much easier for delegates to visualize things and to see how they can take this learning that they've got and put it into practice. So I think the previous version was extremely tailorable, but that can be a two-edged sword where you think, well, you can tailor everything. And then someone says, well, okay, I've got this blank piece of paper. I'm not sure what words and pictures to put on this. So this new version, what I really like, takes away that fear of the blank page and gives a starting point and some practical guidelines as what can go into all of these different artifacts. But again, it's still tailorable, so you're not sort of stuck in stone or in concrete about following to the letter each of the templates. But it does really get over that blank page fear, where it gives you a lot of good input and then a starting point to take it from there. So the example we can see on the screen here, this is a project canvas, which would be the equivalent of a business case in PRINCE2 project management. And it gives really a nice visual representation of the key elements that we need to think about when doing a new project, just to say, is this project worthwhile? Is it a good idea? Should we do it at all? And this is a way of just thinking through all the different elements. So that's one thing that we've got. We can see in the middle there, it talks about user groups or personas. And that's another template that we can sort of drill down into that middle part. And then we can think about our stakeholders, our key users that's going to use the solution, and think, what do they need from it? What are their requirements? What are their expectations? What are their values? And so on. What are their goals? What are their pains? So we can really make sure that we're thinking about a user-centric view of the solutions that we're going to provide. Another example that we've got there is a user story. So it's saying, what does that persona, now that we've thought about the persona and sort of can relate to who they are, we say, what do they need? So who are they? What do they need? And why would they need that? What value would it add? What benefit would they get if they were able to do that thing with this new solution that we're providing? So yeah, love these. I love the sort of the structure, but yet tailorability, if that's a word, of the templates. And then I particularly love the worked examples of the use case. That's, yeah, so four scenarios are mentioned in the case study, in the textbook, and one in particular is sort of followed right through and populated into these templates. So we can see a worked example, which just takes that even to the next level, not just what kinds of things could we put, but here's one I did earlier, and people can see from that and really learn from that.
Yeah, this is the point where I'm always nervous when I'm asking people, so would it help? And so I'm happy. Obviously, this is something you can't rehearse, so you could have said, no, I don't think it's helpful at all. But yeah, I think I do agree, because it's also one of the things that I really loved about learning when I like very long ago learned about PRINCE2 project management. There was this example of how to plan an event, and they had all of the documentation, which they call management products, right? They will show you an example of actually doing a conference, and that was the point where I was like, oh, now I get it, and now it makes sense why I have to like populate all of these documentation things, and why it's not just work up front that I'm producing, but nobody ever needs it, right? And that's where I fell in love with PRINCE2 project management, because it was really practical, and I would come back and back again during my projects after that I was doing as a consultant, because it just made sense. It just helped you on what to put in there, because to be honest, a template like the one that you can see on the screen, or the version that you can see on screen, very nice, but what do I fill in there, right? And it's also one of the things that as an agile coach later I found are the most daunting, because people will sit there and they're like, yeah, it does make sense, and I understand it, and it is logical and so on, but I don't know what to write, right? So I think that is really helpful. So let's have a look at a very brief look, because we're coming up against the end of what we have time for to talk through. I could talk through this for ages for you guys. Let's have a look at a couple of these, like one of the use cases, have a look at why it's important. And fun fact, some of you might know, but probably not a lot, is that I was actually pregnant when we started writing this. So I've had 2 babies in a very short time. One is PRINCE2 Agile version 2, and one is the birth of my first child. And actually, we found these templates and the use cases, and to really like populate one example with templates that are filled out and show you an example of how it could look like and what you would write, was so important to us that we basically put in all of our effort in long nights and long weeks and so on at the end of what we actually had time for, and we just did it on our own because we thought it was really important with the team. And I think it was, yeah, so the night I gave off the I handed in my manuscript. I got contractions, I think, and 2 days later, my daughter was there. So it was so important. I couldn't let it go. So basically, that was really exciting. And now it's being translated, and I'm seeing people use it, and I'm getting feedback on things people like and don't like. So I think this is the most exciting thing to me, like the birth of this thing. Very personal information there. Sorry for the TMI, but I think that's cool to know that it was such a high priority for us in the authoring team as well. So don't get into the details of this. I'm just showing you this as an example that this is here. And if you want more of this, if you want to have the templates, for instance, they are there. You can get them through a membership with PeopleCert Plus, but I'm not sales, so I will not tell you the details of this. Please reach out to ILX on anything that you might need for this. What do we get in training? What do we get afterwards, and so on. But this is an example, and you'll see here this is an example of an NGO. So we do have 4 different use cases, and not all of them are things that we do for money. We have an NGO example as well for all of those of you that are in government or that are in not-for-profit things, and you need to do project management a little differently, to be honest, right? So we have a couple of examples here. And what I think is really beautiful is that we can also see in this example the 2 different ways of using PRINCE2 Agile version 2. So you can use it to make sure that agility happens in your organization as a more like widespread thing. So the product of your project, your Agile project would be at the end, we have the Agile mindset in place in the organization. And this is, for instance, where we would use templates a little differently. So you will have one example here that is not requirement based, but it's ADDI employee. And the employee here will tell you what they think of change, of agility, of embracing change, whether they are tired of change, whether they think agility makes sense, and so on, and what they need. So this is another way of using, for instance, all of the guidance in PRINCE2 Agile version 2 on how to do a pilot project, basically, to implement agility into your organization. And you will see that how to handle requirements with user personas, but also like the Agile change part. And all of this is then followed through all of the templates that we say should make sense for you to have, because we only give you the bare minimum, keep in mind. We did not go overboard. And we have made sure that there is not too much that you need to do upfront, because that's not very agile. But we do show you a whole breakdown, for instance, of how that will look cut up into stages, releases, how a user story might be named, for instance, why it makes sense to have this information on a post-it, and so on, if you're using post-its in physical or digital form, and so on. So I think this is really exciting, and we'll give you a small glimpse. I know I can't talk in detail, but have a look out for these things. I think this is the second biggest strength, apart from the mindset and handover thing, showing you how it's done in real life, like very practical level. So why is PRINCE2 Agile version 2 valuable? It's time for me to get a bit nervous again. Carol, from your experience, what do you think?
Yeah, and perhaps I can just sum up looking at the points on the screen then. Simple answer, it's very valuable and very sort of modern and relevant to the kinds of things that we're faced with doing today. So just summing up PRINCE2 Agile, hopefully this point, if you don't remember every single word we said, that you remember this point, that it's both about being agile as well as doing agile. Also that great leadership and autonomous teams is not a contradiction. So we blend the best of both worlds with, we have that governance structure, but also the flexibility to behave dynamically and have the most valuable current product that we need. Agile is also about embracing change, and huge benefit in PRINCE2 Agile version 2 is the practicality with those templates, with the worked examples. So you get back to work the day after the training and you think, right, actually, I know what to do. Let me get started, rather than, great, it all made sense, but now what? So love the new version. Very happy. I've taught the course a few times already, and really getting some good feedback from delegates as well. Yeah. Okay.
Nice. So I think it is time for Etty to wrap up, and then we'll get to Q&A. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys. Sorry, my camera's taking a little while to load up. There we are. Thank you so much, both of you. I hope the audience agree, but I thought that was a very good presentation, super useful. Yeah, so I will try and keep my bit brief because I'm conscious that we've not got loads of time for Q&A, and I want to make sure everyone can get their questions answered. But essentially, this is just a reminder that PRINCE2 Agile version 2 is now available to train from ILX. So you can opt for our varying study options. We have e-learning, which is a sort of self-paced option, so you can go through the content at a time that suits you, whether that's an hour a day a week, however works best for you. We also have live virtual and classroom sessions where one of our trainers, like Carol here, will take you through the course content over sort of 2 to 3 days, either online or in person. And then we also have our blended option, which kind of combines the two. So you'll do the e-learning for the foundation portion, really take the time to digest that content. And then for practitioner, you'll go into one of our classrooms and have the opportunity to kind of ask our trainers those more practical questions and how it's really used in practice. So that is a really whistle-stop tour of what's available, but you can definitely find out loads more on the website. So do pop over onto ilxgroup.com and you can check out loads more about the PRINCE2 course, PRINCE2 Agile courses over there. So time for some questions now. We've had a couple come through already, so I will start with those ones. The first question is, since version 2 was only released in May, do ILX have a bank of exam past papers already? So if you're on those courses, will you get the chance to kind of do one of the past exams and really practice? I'm not sure. I guess, Carol, maybe you're best to answer this one.
Yeah, so the past papers are not released publicly, and sort of the exact question, but there are some sample papers set by the same examiners that set the live papers. So there are sample papers that are available on the PeopleCert website. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and if you do the e-learning course as well, we do have an exam simulator as part of that. So there's a breadth of kind of sample questions that you can work through over there. Next question, are all of the materials supporting documentation and examples freely available, or are they included within a course purchase?
So I will pick up this one, I think, because there's a couple of ways you can get to stuff, right? So there's via ILX, you can purchase a course and you will have you will get all of the things you need. You will get the manual basically, or the written publication in whatever form, and that will have the templates, the examples, documentation, and so on. So keeping in mind that is of course a written text in there, but if you want to have added downloadable templates that you can use, that is something that PeopleCert would be giving you. So that is something that you would be looking at in your PeopleCert Plus membership, which I highly recommend, because you will not only get like this document, but also a couple of others interesting things. I'm just throwing ITIL out there, which I know that ILX is also doing. So there you can have a look at different languages, and you will be able to download templates and populate them yourself. So that is not necessarily part of the training in the book that you're getting. So there's two things. It's the examples and everything that you get in the training and in the book. And then there is the downloadable templates that you can populate on your own, which is available via PeopleCert Plus membership. And then there is the option, which I do not recommend, but if you had a training with ILX and you think, I need the book in printed version, cool. If you say, I will do it on my own, I'm not sure, because I like trainers and we really can explain it to you a lot better. I don't have to tell you this, but I'm a trainer myself, and I can tell you I was vastly unhappy when I just held the book and tried to teach myself, because there's a lot of stuff in there that you might not need right away. And it really helps if somebody can just like take you by the hand and show you what you need now, how the exam's going to be, blah, blah, and so on. So I really recommend you take a training first, but you can also have the option of getting the book on your own. I think this is done via Amazon store with PeopleCert. So you could Google that and have a look, but I really recommend you get the package deal. Basically, it's also financially a way better deal than trying to buy the book on your own, because it's just very expensive. It's a how do you call this in English? One of those important books that you put into your presentational bookcase, right? And these sorts of books are always very expensive. Yeah, so get a training basically, and if you need the downloadable templates, you'll hear about it from PeopleCert, I guess.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Rute. Well, we're at time, and I don't think we've had any other questions, so we'll give it another minute or so if people want to hang on and do have additional questions. But yeah, in the meantime, I just want to say thank you so much again, both of you. Hopefully everyone else has enjoyed the presentation. If you do want to find out more information about PRINCE2 Agile, you can do so over on ilxgroup.com. And also drop us a follow on sort of social media channels. There's a lot of information coming out on those about new courses and things like that. So yeah, thank you very much. We've had no more questions, so I think we're all good. You obviously covered everything off that people needed to know, which is always useful. So yeah, thanks very much everyone for joining. We hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.